Hi there, I'm George Farrugia and this is the Great British Chef's Signature Series. Today I'm cooking a lovely beef short rib. I've got some fantastic oysters here and some beautiful vegetables here from Le Marché. You cannot beat a family get-together, especially a Cypriot one. The conversation, the laughter, the music, the smells, and I think ultimately that kind of drove me into cooking. If you take time and care to respect your ingredients, you're going to get a lovely end product. We've always had this concept of sharing, you know, whether you call it tapas, meze, you kind of eat everything and share everything at the table. And I think that's part of the fun of eating, really. So today I'm cooking a lovely beef short rib from H.G. Walter. It's a supply that I've used for many years. I've got some fantastic oysters here and some beautiful vegetables here from Le Marché. The dish itself is kind of a spin-off on steak and oyster. Growing up north, having a steak and oyster pie, chips and gravy, you don't get much better. I mean, this is a little bit better than that, I hope, but it's just them little memories of steak and oyster, and I love it as a flavour combination. First things first, what I want to do is organise some of the vegetables. When you're slicing the vegetables for any stew, if you do them too small, you're going to have you know, mash at the end of the cooking. So what I want is to have a nice sized chunky veg, so at the end you've actually got something to eat rather than just, you know, mushy vegetables. But even the garlic itself, a lot of people put this towards the end of the cooking. I put it at the beginning because there's nothing better than sweet roasted garlic flavour. For me, I think having fresh vegetables when you're cooking is crucial, and I think, you know, that's one of the great things working so closely with my suppliers, is that if something's not right, you'll let me know and I can change the dish accordingly with the seasons. So I'm going to heat up a little bit of oil in the pan, and then the idea is when you want a very rich sauce full of flavour, you need the caramelization, and your vegetables need to be cooked to extract that natural sweetness. And also as well, whenever you're colouring vegetables, it's very important to actually coat all the veg in the fat. Otherwise, you're going to have dry spots and they're more likely to burn. I'm going to add the onions as well. I'm going to add the garlic as well. Give them a little stir. I'm adding the garlic in its skin. The idea of that is it's going to hold the garlic together. You're not going to eat it later, but the idea is I can caramelise it, I can turn it over, and I've got control. So I'm going to add these lovely tomatoes. Again, a nice sweetness. Also, that lovely water from the tomato is going to deglaze anything that's in the pan. And also I'm going to add our lovely little spice mix. So in here, like before, I've got some lovely cloves, white peppercorns, juniper, and star anise. I'm going to give that a little mix. So I'm going to add the bay leaf, the rosemary, and a little bit of thyme as well. Direct to the pot. So the idea is just put the herbs in. They're going to slowly start permeating, but I don't want to mix them in because I don't want the herbs to fry. So I've got some fantastic beef here. So what I'm going to do is, to get maximum caramelization, I'm going to actually whip these off into individual ribs. The idea is you've got this lovely insert in the middle so that I can get maximum caramelization around the whole rib prior to braising it. And you probably need to season it quite generously as well, because you'll lose some of the seasoning when I actually come to fry it. So I'm going to give that a nice little seasoning now. A little salt, little black pepper, and you know, you want to season everywhere. Very important as well not to have wet fingers when you season. If you've got wet fingers, you get lumped seasoning. So as you can see here, the vegetables, they're all caramelized, they're all sweet. With just a little bit of white wine. And a good indicator whether you've done a good job with your vegetables is actually the color, because you can see it's actually lovely and caramelized and brown. So what I want to this now is I want to actually just reduce that alcohol just by half, just to intensify it slightly. So now the wine is reduced by half. I'm actually going to add a little bit of veal stock, just to give the sauce a little bit of body. Cool. So I'm going to go into the pan. And that's that. Now that the actual base on the veg side is ready in the casserole, I'm actually going to get some of our lovely smoked bacon. So I'm just going to slice the bacon, just so I can get it caramelized in the pan. I'm just going to add the bacon into the pan, so it's going to cook in its own fat. Every single stage of cooking, when you're making a sauce, can create a bitterness in your end sauce. So it's really important that you really concentrate on getting a nice caramelization of your bacon. As soon as it's sizzling like that, and you've got that lovely little colour and flavour, and you can smell when it's ready as well. I'm going to put all of that inside the pan at the back. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water just to deglaze the bottom of the pan with the bacon. And as you can see, it starts to change colour. But the important thing is to reduce it after, because you don't want it wishy-washy. Otherwise you're going to dilute the stock. So I'm going to sear the short ribs now in the pan, nice and hot. So the little skin on the outside is going to caramelize it and actually make a nice texture to eat. So I always start that side first. I think for me, I think the beauty of dishes like this is you never get bored of that little buzz of actually cooking with nice ingredients, you know, for family, friends or for customers. If you take that time and care to respect your ingredients, you're going to get a lovely end product, and ultimately people's reaction at the dinner table is priceless, and that's what you look for every day when we cook. As you can see there, that skin's rendered beautifully. So now I'm going to turn them on the side to actually caramelize everywhere nice and even. So now everything is nice and caramelized. I'm going to place them inside the dish at the back. I've already got the fat off the bacon. I've got that lovely sediment, but I don't want added fat from the beef. So that one I'm actually going to tip off. I'm going to add the Guinness. So I'm just adding the treacle now. I don't want to cook the treacle really. That's there as like a little base. Essentially what the treacle and the Guinness is giving you is like a stouty flavour. I'm going to add that to the pan. So now I'm going to transfer that to the oven. So with oysters, when you're opening oysters, the key is to have kitchen cloth or a normal cloth like that is great. And then what you're looking for is to have a nice sturdy hold on the oyster. And there's a natural groove in the middle here. And what I'm looking for is the muscle. You very carefully shimmy with your knife, with an oyster knife. And as you can see, you kind of feel your way. There's a lovely little muscle here on the top. And what I'm looking for is just to loosen that off. Because ultimately all you want left on the oyster shell is just that this little muscle holding it together. And then what I'm going to do is, because I'm actually going to use the oyster juice, I want to separate this water and just pass it through a little sieve. A good tip as well with the scallops is to actually, using your knife, if you pinch on the corner, it will contract. And that's just to check that your oysters are actually fresh. If it doesn't retract, then your oysters are dead and you don't want to eat that. So with the oysters, I've gave these a quick wash in water, but what I am going to do is actually slice them in two. Got some seasoned flour here, and here I've got some egg, and then I've got some lovely breadcrumbs here as well. So what I'm going to do is first you have to coat everything inside the flour. These have been pre-dried, the oysters. The general rule whenever you're coating anything is to have one dirty hand and one clean hand. So now you just need to coat, make sure everything is coated inside, any excess, as much as possible, and in the breadcrumbs. Make sure that there's no exposed egg wash. You want it all nice and crispy. So for the Gremolata, I'm actually going to put a little bit of chervil and a little bit of chopped parsley. I got some large leaves because the idea is you want some nice julienne, which is a nice single stroke cut. Just a one stroke motion up and down to get them nice and thin. So I'm just going to transfer the herbs to the bowl. The chervil is very, it's quite a clean, grassy and very fragrant herb. It's got a little bit of an anise type of vibe to it. I'm just going to run through that just with my knife. So I'm just going to finally grate the lemon zest just over. And when you're grating with a microplane, the idea is if you have it this side up, these little borders actually catch all the zest and you can tip it out after. And if you just look at this motion here, you can actually see that I'm not getting the white, the bitter pith, I just want the zest. So with the horseradish, all you need to do is shave off the outside to expose the white flesh underneath. Now, unlike the lemon, this one, I want to actually grate this way because I actually want to see what's going in, otherwise it's going to be really hot in the mouth and I don't want that. So now I'm just going to season this base with a little bit of Maldon sea salt. When you put it inside as well, it's just give it a little crush as well, just to get a bit more yield out of it. I'm also going to put a little bit of Espelette pepper, just for a bit of smoky chili hit. So now I'm going to fry the oysters. You want them in until the breadcrumbs are golden, and that's it really, because technically you can eat an oyster raw anyway. Strain as much of that fat as possible. I'm going to chuck them inside our lovely chervil, parsley, lemon zest and Maldon sea salt. And the idea is I want everything, while they're still warm, to go inside and just give them a little coating of all the herbs and everything. So the beef's been cooking now for about 3.5 to 5 hours. So now the beef's come out of the oven, you can see that some of them naturally will lose the bone, but that's not a problem. That's a good sign that it's cooked. So the idea with this dish is it's a sharing dish, so it might look very big and chunky for one, but if you all rip into it, it'll be gone in 2 seconds. The addition of the oysters is just that classic marriage of steak and oyster, but I think the purpose of this is that you get that lovely little oyster little finish on the dish, which I think is great. I'm actually going to put a little bit of these little herbs just dotted around as well. So here I've got a lovely bit of infused buttermilk. with some lemon juice, a little bit of sliced garlic, and that lovely oyster water that I passed earlier on. So here I've got some lovely oyster leaves that I've actually just sliced in half. And then I've got some zesty cress, little flowers. They're a nice little herby note, just to again complement that Gremolata idea of all the herbs and the lemon. Braised beef short rib with treacle Guinness, crispy oyster Gremolata, and a buttermilk horseradish and oyster water sauce.